All right. Title of today's lecture is blood pressure. And so I'm going to write it again down here. Blood pressure is very simply defined as the force that blood exerts against vessel walls. Is the force that blood exerts against vessel walls. And I have a very simple question. What causes it? What's that? That's it. So let's write the question and then we'll write the answer. What causes blood pressure? Answer: contraction of the ventricles of the heart. More specifically, which ventricle are we really concerned about?
The right.
You're right, because it's pulling blood back into your heart.
Those are all the answer choices. The answer is left, because it's the one that's forcing the blood into the body. Okay? Now, there's a name for this. Contraction of the ventricles of the heart. There's a name for this. The name for this is systole. Systole. That is the word for contractions of the ventricles.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so sometimes people say like they're so mad they can feel their blood pressure rising. That's not true, is it?
In some cases it might be, because when you're really upset, your heart rate increases, and you know, sometimes you can feel it, you know.
Like whenever it pounds in your temples.
Yes, yeah. So that literally is blood pressure rising, but I don't know that everybody who says they can actually can feel it. But yeah, all right. Now, folks, obviously the contraction of the heart muscle, that systole, is super important. But I'm going to offer this to you as well. The relaxation of the heart muscle is equally important. Why?
It releases tension.
That's true. What's happening while it relaxes?
It's filling up.
It's filling back up again. It wouldn't have anything to send out if it didn't relax to fill back up again. I don't know if I can wax philosophical for a second. I think there's a reason for that too. There's a time to exert our energy and work super hard, and it's just as important to relax. Okay? So the heart relaxes and then it contracts, and relaxes and then contracts. The moments where the heart, and I'll write this down, the heart must then relax to refill with blood. It's a rhythm. Gotta have that. There's a word for this too. The word for this is the word diastole. So the heart relaxes again. That's diastole. That is why in blood pressure there are two numbers. In a reading. The first number is the big number is the systolic pressure. Systolic pressure is the high number. And that's because the heart is contracting. When the heart contracts, there is a high number. Because that force of the blood against the vessel walls is really high, which is also why you can feel your pulse, okay? Because you have that surge of blood, that increase in pressure as the heart muscle contracts. That's the surge that you're feeling, the throb of the systolic pressure. So then logically, gang, what's the other number? What's it called? Diastolic pressure. Diastolic pressure, that's the low number. That's when the heart muscle is relaxing. Okay. Now, there is a unit that we use for this. There's a number of units that we could use to measure pressure, but there's only one that's used for blood pressure. Unit to measure blood pressure is mmHg. Stands for what? Millimeters of mercury. Somebody asked me, well, Helly, I thought that mercury's bad for you. Oh yeah, mercury's really bad for you. Yeah. Mercury, element 80, is your body doesn't know what to do with it. If you ingest mercury, your body can't process it because it's an element. There's nothing it can do to break it down other than a nuclear reaction, which would be way more devastating to the body. So what happens is your body's like, well, we don't know what to do. Some of it ends up in your brain. Whatever goes in your bloodstream, your liver tries to absorb it, and it doesn't know what to do with it, so it stores it for the rest of your life. We didn't know this for a very long time, so people were pretty haphazard. They're like, oh yeah, let's just, hey, there's some mercury. Like my mom was telling me, yeah, when we were in school, if somebody broke like a thermometer, and mercury spilled out, we just played with it for the rest of the hour. Just poured it around in our hands. It's like, anyway, when I was teaching at the junior high, I found a bottle of it. There was like a baby food jar, like full of it. I was like, is that mercury? It wasn't even labeled. I was like, oh my gosh, there's a violation or 5. Anyway, I poured it on the table. I was like, here, play with that. No, I'm just kidding. I just picked it up. It was super heavy. But mercury is an interesting metal because it's the only one on the periodic table that is a blank at room temperature. Liquid. Which is, why that somebody figured out, okay, if we take this and we put it like in a glass tube, okay, and then like set it like a pool of it in a chamber here, and basically they put these graduations on it in millimeters. Yeah, there's a bunch of them, right? Which is one of the reasons this reading is so accurate and so specific, is because it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure to make mercury rise 1 millimeter. Now, there's a pool of it down below here, okay? You don't need to draw this, but if you want to, you can try that. Yeah, no, that's fine. No, you need to draw it. Just everybody got to draw it. All right, so here's the deal. There's air space above here, okay? So here is like a little bulb to pump it up with, all right? And it's got a little release valve. So if I add air pressure to this space, it will force the mercury up into this tube, okay? And from that, we can gauge how much pressure, okay? Now all we have to do is put another tube in the other side and the air pressure there, and put it in a cuff around somebody's arm, okay? And basically create a tourniquet. Because that's what a blood pressure cuff actually is. It is a fancy tourniquet, okay, that has pressure graduations on. You pump up the cuff until you've completely cut off the blood pressure, or cut off the blood flow in the arm. Now you're not supposed to do that for very long. Then you slowly release the pressure. By releasing the valve, the pressure begins to drop. And now we don't use so much mercury in these devices, but we use that reading as our reading. If you look here at the bottom, millimeters of mercury. Then you see the giant weird name of the actual name of this device, which is the Sphygmomanometer. That's why we use the term blood pressure cuff, because this name is terrible. Sphygmomanometer. And so in some doctor's offices, they will still have this thing on the wall. If you see a silver column rising within one of these, that's actual mercury. It won't hurt you because it's sealed inside that thing unless you break it open and start eating it or something, which they'll probably ask you to leave the doctor's office. Yeah, question?
So you said there's still mercury in the cuffs?
There's not any mercury in these cuffs. Instead of using mercury as this, what this is basically just a pressure. You know what? I wonder if I can make it work. Here, hold on. It just responds to pressure, like a scale responds to it with springs. Glad I chose to record this lecture. Hey, everyone at home. I'm a doofus. All right. So you can see millimeters of mercury there as this column would start to rise. Does that make sense? So there's no mercury in this. It's just a gauge instead. But there's some that still have that. It's just a very old unit of measurement. And we can measure pressure in all kinds of things. Can you name any other pressure readings? What was it? Tire pressures in pounds per square inch, our PSI, the torr, atmospheres, all these different things. But for this, we're only using millimeters of mercury, and that's all it's ever used. Okay? Now, the unit we've established, here's the range of normal. I also don't like this word, normal. There really is no such thing. Normal is a lie. Average would be better, yeah. Range in this case of numbers that don't freak us out, okay? For systolic, generally medical professionals don't freak out as long as you're somewhere between 100 and 150. That's a huge range. What was the unit again?
100 millimeters
Mercury.
Yeah.
All right. I just got to throw a little G on the end here. Systolic, and then the diastolic range is a little bit less. Yes, very good. 60 to, actually, we'll bring it down by 10. 60 to 90. Between 90 and 100 is considered, 90 and above is considered hypertensive. In fact, 80 to 90 is considered pre-hypertensive. Hey, what's hypertension? High blood pressure. Hyper, the prefix that means too much of something or greater than normal. Tensive being blood pressure. So if hypertension is high blood pressure, what's low blood pressure? Hypotension. Right. All right, last thing here. Standard normal reading. Like what's blood pressure supposed to be? They'll throw this number out. 120 over 80 millimeters of mercury. That means when the heart is contracting, 120, while it's relaxed, 80. Yours probably isn't this, okay? It might be at some point today. It might have been when you walked in. If it was, it's not when you're sitting down. If it is when you're sitting down, it won't be when you walk away, okay? This is constantly changing, and your body is doing all kinds of fancy physiological tricks to keep it kind of close to this, or keep it pretty normal. And there's a lot of neat things your body does with the kidneys and with the blood vessels and with hormones and things like that to keep it in this range. And we'll talk about that next time.